Welcome to the TV and Movie Review Show, bringing you a review on the latest TV shows and movies. So let's jump into it. Hope you enjoy the show.
This is your host, Jazzy929, and this is my TV and movie review show. I am going to be reviewing the TV show, The Outsider. It comes on HBO on Sunday nights at 9 p.m., if I'm not mistaken, as far as the time. I am going to be reviewing the 4th episode. I want to let you all know that I do appreciate you all for tuning in. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and jump into my review. It opens up in this episode with a flashback of a prisoner from the last episode that was charged with the death of the two little girls. In this episode, I found out that the two little girls were actually sisters. The guy that was accused of killing the two little girls, his name is Heath. In the beginning of this episode, we find out that he is having breakfast with Marie. We find out that Marie in this episode is a new character that they have brought in. We see that Holly calls Anderson, and she wants to speak to him about the things that she has found out about in this case so far. We see that she meets a woman that used to work with Terry, and she follows her home, and she actually gets maced. And they end up going into the house, and they talk. And the woman, the employee that used to work with Heath, tells her that Heath actually didn't do it. We see that we get a flashback of March 6th, and the cops come around to question Heath, but Heath has been taken over by what the character, as far as we are calling right now, we're going to call the boogeyman character, and we're going to call him the boogeyman character, everybody. We see Heath has contact with Terry, which moves the virus over to Terry. We see that Holly goes and sees Peter again. He tells her that he has seen her in his past, and he knows that someone, as far as he just says he tells Holly he didn't do it. So I'm trying to figure out when he said that, if he was talking about Heath didn't do it or his son Terry didn't do it. He says Holly was playing cards with his grandmother last time he seen her in the past, and he also seen her get beat by her husband. I want to know what's going on with Peter. I want to know if he has sight, everybody. Everybody wants to call it The Shining. I call it Sight. We see Holly, and she was having dinner with Andy, and Andy is actually a security guard that used to work in a nursing home. We see them go over what happened to Heath's family. We find out that Heath's brother had an overdose, and we see his mother kill herself by driving into the pole. And that was a very tragic scene right there. We see his grandfather had a stroke. His grandmother poisoned herself. And we see that the background of his family was tragic, just like the Peterson family. We find out that the boogeyman actually feeds on grief, and that's how he gets his strength. We see the bartender tell Holly that murder has become a virus. We find out during Heath's trip to New York, he sends a postcard to the woman employee in February. He says he met Marie there, and during a sexual act, Marie actually scratched him on his back, and that's how he contacted the virus. We see Marie gets a visit from Holly in prison. Why Marie is still alive, I don't know. I want to know what y'all thoughts are on that. Everyone else is dead. We see she is locked up for murdering a boy. And her family was affected too. We see her family was affected like the other families too. We see Holly has a flashback going into the prison, of her being tested when she was a young girl. She sees her grandmother in a vision while she's in an MRI machine, and her grandmother hands her a doll baby. We see that her mother had died as she was being raised by her mother. Her mother was taking care of her, and during that time her mother died. We see Marie was charged with killing a boy, which killed her uncle and dad. Maria fears that if she speaks a Heath, then she will be sent to a mental institution. We see that the lady gives Holly an address while Holly is in a prison. Holly visits this lady, and they talk about beliefs and folk tales. We find out that the boogeyman is a shapeshifter, and it takes families as well as main victims. Holly studies up on the boogeyman we see in this episode. She's going through a book, and she's seeing different pictures of the forms that the boogeyman actually takes. It gives me a Pennywise feel. I want to know what your thoughts are on that. We see Jack kills a deer. In this episode, we see that he goes to the store and gets some camp gear in the woods. We see that the dead deer is all cut up, and it actually looked similar to what Frank looked like. We see Jack's neck looks pretty bad in this episode. I want to know what will the boogeyman actually tell Jack to do next. We see him, as far as Jack, speaking to the boogeyman in the truck. We actually don't see visually what he's looking at, but we actually can see that he's talking to something. My personal thoughts on him shooting that deer was he actually shot that deer to go ahead and get more power for the boogeyman, because let me remind you, the boogeyman feeds on grief. The boogeyman feeds on grief. So it would make sense for the dying deer to be dying and grieving or suffering or whatnot. And the power came from, he was getting power from that dying deer. Terry's wife tries to get the girls in the homeschool, and she interviews someone, and she finds out that they're actually a reporter, and she kicks them out of her house. We see Anderson looking at video from the bar and sees that Terry scratched the bartender. He speaks to the bartender. We see Anderson speak to the kid that stole the van, and the kid does not remember the boogeyman's name, but he draws him out for Anderson. And we see that the face of the boogeyman is actually distorted. That's what I got all out of this episode right here. I want to know what your thoughts are about it. I hope this review was pretty good for you. With that being said, I want to know if anybody in Dayton actually recognizes any of the scenes from this episode or this show right here, as far as the episodes that have been, the sites have been in Dayton. I want to know if y'all recognize anything. That question was for actually the Dayton family out there. That's all. That's just what I got on this episode. I hope y'all enjoyed it. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close. I want to thank you all for listening. Till next time.
Welcome to the TV and movie. Find Talking Out Loud with Jazzy 929 at Spreaker, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Castbox, Deezer, Soundcloud, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Find merch at Red Bubble.
Hi, Royal.